subscribe.
Holding all together.
Welcome back to the Angry Ops Guy podcast. Putting together a little bonus episode here. And what does bonus episode mean? It means our podcast producer extraordinaire, Emily, is back. Emily, I missed you. I haven't seen you in forever. What's going on? Happy New Year.
I miss you too, buddy. Happy New Year. It's good to see you. I feel like we have our chats, not really offline because they're still technically online, but it's nice to see your face. It's good to catch up with you. See ya. How's the pod been going?
You know, I had to kind of just put a pin in it for a few months between life and motivation and work, like most of us. But new year, a little bit more sleep, try to refocus and, got some new guests that have come on and recorded that you and I will be dropping in the upcoming weeks, which is exciting for the WSI network and other ops people. So stay tuned for that. But we're, going to get back into a rhythm here with different themes and different things. And just glad to have you back because we recorded a couple of bonus episodes last year around songs and so forth, but haven't had a real chance to talk to you about anything. And lots has changed for you in the last 6 to 8 months. So, what do you want to talk about today that's constructive and that, is meaningful to anybody other than us?
Yeah, I thought we could talk about I suppose the transition from agency life to non-agency life, because I no longer work for an agency, but also kind of fold in ops and sales and kind of the difference there and where they sort of meet in the middle and that kind of thing, because ops is not totally off my plate anymore, but it's certainly not even a little bit a major part of my job anymore, which is, sorry to all the ops people out there, not a bad thing.
Oh, so you're no longer enamored with just the thrilling rush of the pace of operations in digital marketing, eh?
No. I mean, I would say I miss the technical side of digital marketing because that can kind of be, if you're into it, that can kind of be fun to chew on and play with a little bit. But I really don't do any of that. You say I'm sick and twisted?
No, I said you have to be sick and twisted to just love the thrill of technology and ops. But hey, this is coming from the ops guy. So yeah, I think that's a great theme because, you have an interesting perspective now being someone that has spent, adequate time in operations and now have made like the full shift into more a sales focused career path or role. So let me kind of just maybe ask you an icebreaker and so forth, since I think it's a great subject. Is, again, you've had, let's say, at least 6 months away from agency life. What's your biggest reflection for yourself and knowing that you do have passion for sales, but you're looking at it from both sides now? What's your biggest kind of reflection exiting the day-to-day agency operations and how, things are for you now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a two-sided coin because there's the one side where working for an agency, a digital marketing agency, is not for everyone. And that's okay. That's totally fine. Not everyone should do every job. I could never be a doctor. But on the one hand there, it's like kudos to anyone who does work in digital marketing, particularly for an agency. You are dealing with a fire hose of work pretty much 100% of the time. So there's some kudos there in and of itself because you're taking on a significant workload and honestly making magic, even if sometimes your clients don't see it that way. But the other side of that is like, now that I don't do that, I'm noticing a very significant change in my mental health and the way I move through the world, even physically. Like there have been a ton of changes. So that's been really positive. If you think that sounds dramatic, go listen to the episodes with Jack Porter Smith. He is a big example of all love and light to Jack because we do love him so much, but taking it a little too far and to the wrong end of the spectrum. But I think he has done a great job of teaching people, the lesson in all of that and making sure that you don't burn out. So great episodes. There's two.
Yep.
Um, Check them out. But yeah, huge change in just like my overall well being since.
It's so interesting, eh? That that's what a lot of people that have been in operations, no matter age, tenure, or size and scale of an agency in the terms of revenue or client base, really reflect on. And like I said, you know, your agency world, when we classify operations, was absolutely digital marketing, but heavily into the PR side. Um, you know, uh, in where your focus was, where, for example, Jack was very focused on paid advertising as almost a production center supplier, but also and client facing. And then there's me, where I am like traditional digital marketing agency in the sense of web development and digital marketing in the sense of visibility exposure online. But there's a theme here, and maybe it will be an episode with you or another guest. But I've said with our early episodes with Christina, when she was able to be on with frequency and repetition, was burnout is a real thing in the digital space. And I have many stories that don't show me in a positive light. And when I share about my severe episodes of burnout, and I've had a couple in my career, but I do now, as I get older and more mature and more comfortable, like really feel that you have to talk about that stuff, because you are trying to help other people avoid those mistakes of pushing yourself too far, or just not identifying. And this goes back to what Jack said in part one of his episode with us. He goes, I realized through the journey of ops that he wasn't an ops person. He was much more so he was much more a visionary, and someone that if he felt that where he was really comfortable and he could succeed and have confidence was to drive people and drive business and strategy and consulting, versus being ops Mike that beats to the drum of fulfillment. And just client urgency and all, like you could tell Emily has PR training and background when she says it's a fire hose of challenges, where I say it's a fire hose of bullshit, because it is. The tap is always full open. And me and Christina used to say, it's like you're always on fire, and the unpredictability of what your day will be versus having structure. And then maybe we can transition back to, you said, as you mentioned about your mental health. And I'm not going to ask you anything that's sensitive and so forth to make you uncomfortable, but that's a huge win to identify with some time off, reflection, and then pivoting that you've done for yourself, that you feel like you're in a much better place. So maybe, as the theme of what you suggested here, where you're saying is you've gone from ops to sales, and where's the gaps and what's the differences, is what's the biggest difference for you focusing on sales now? Because also, let me just set context. We're not at all talking that, agency life and the agency you work for is the problem. We're talking about agency life overall in the sense of operational fulfillment. So just to be clear on that. But what's the biggest thing you saw moving to sales that really kind of helped you outside of your own personal growth and efforts to just identify, like, this is better for my mental health? Was it the stress of client management? Was it the pace of unpredictability? Or was it the agency ops life is moving too fast in the technology sector to keep up, versus, or simply was it you identifying as you're getting respectfully older, just your passion, or it's something that you feel strongly about now versus 5 years ago, and the Emily that was there saying, I need a job and I'm trying to carve my career path out, and operations is the first foundational step?
I think part of it is, very personal to me. I think I do much better when my job is people centric, and that is part of digital marketing, and that's probably one of the things I really loved about working at our agency was, all the client facing work. Project management was great because I got to work with our clients very, very directly. And so that piece of it was a lot of fun. And you see a lot of that in sales as well. It's very client facing. You're working with people all the time. You're trying to win them over with your offering and that kind of thing. But you kind of just, when you're really in it and you're doing well, you kind of just get to be a person with another person, which is really
Hmm.
nice.
Yep.
Kind of to your point, the nature of the work I do now is, one, significantly less technical, and two, way less. There's way less pressure. Even if something that we do falls through, obviously that's not a good day. I'll tell you that.
No
But
kidding.
it's not like somebody's business is on the line, which is where it's a little bit different for digital marketing. And I know you and
Ah,
Virginia have talked a lot about, it's not brain surgery, and it's not. And I would say 7 to 8 times out of 10 in digital marketing, the house isn't on fire. Obviously, you still don't want to be making mistakes. You don't want to be, causing the client stress or anything like that. But I would say 7 to 8 times out of 10, it's not a brand reputation destroying moment. So,
do you feel based on what you say, you make a really good point there when you say like a lot of people. When I say people, I mean the consumer, the customer, and from the digital marketing space, right? They're paying thousands of dollars a month, whether it's thousands of dollars towards advertising spend on platforms, or thousands of dollars to an agency to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
yeah.
Um, so, but there's not necessarily a quantifiable result, right away. Whereas, like you said, sales, where you're selling units of a product,
Yeah.
which I understand is what you're doing at, in larger scale. But selling units of a product, it's getting somebody to buy something. It doesn't work for the price, the quantity they need, and the repetition of volume that they need. But we're going to get that shipped to you, and then it's done until the next engagement. Whereas with digital marketing or PR and stuff, it's we have to live or die by metrics that justify where did my money go and what the hell did you people do with my money, because that's still the big question mark in a lot of perception of digital marketing is what the hell do you guys do? A lot of it is technical, like you mentioned earlier, which most customers don't understand, nor should they. That's why they're paying us, because we're the expertise. But it's not, just, oh, that box showed up at my house or my company, and open it up. And that's everything Emily said that she was going to sell me, in the right color, the right size, and the right volume. Whereas Mike's sitting there going, like just recently, right, with the changes with AI integrating into search, and this is the biggest theme going on in our sector, in SEO from July 2025 onward, is site traffic is on the decline. And there is a lot of things out there that are saying, and we can see it in analytics, especially, is if you had, I'm just using fake numbers here for the conversation, but you had 3,000 visitors coming month over month to your website that you have naturally acquired and earned over years of doing SEO, for example, based on what you're doing. You could be seeing 300 visitors a month coming to the website now. And immediately a customer that just simply depends and looks at those units without the full context is going to say, what the hell, Mike? My SEO took a shit. The algorithm has banned me. You guys aren't doing your job for the $3,000 a month I pay you. But the truth of it is, it's simply the shift in the entire digital space, because now AI is changing how the consumer searches for brands online and how we have to get them found. So, do you think am I aligned with you, kind of? Because again, I am a salesperson. Well, let me classify. I'm a business development person, because that's not my full time focus. But I do a lot of business development, especially in the existing client base and referral channel of our agency. But I'm still within my world of digital marketing. But again, you being outside of that, to focus on helping your brand sell product and build a customer base for repeat customers, is that the biggest thing you've kind of seen, is that they can see the start and the end point? And then to your point, the people, or the personable side, is nurturing customer relationships over defending operational results.
Yeah, I remember when people were asking me why not necessarily why I was going to this organization, but just what the change was all about, why I was moving into sales. I would often tell people it's going to be nice to sell people something that they can actually hold in their hands, because when it arrives, they can hold it. They can say, okay, to your point, is it the right color? Blah, blah, blah. They can also see the quality directly, and they can feel the quality. But like that's been a game changer in terms of sales, just because, like, to your point, you can't, if you don't know what you don't know, and that's why you've hired an expert. But also, you don't have a benchmark for what is right or what is good or what is high quality, and then you don't have a benchmark for what's low quality. And I think, understandably so, when people don't understand something, they are quick to judge it and wonder if it is worth their money. And I totally appreciate where that's coming from. I would probably be the same in another scenario. But at the same time, that's where sort of that trust comes in. And that's still directly applicable to the work that we do in selling our product. When we do make a mistake, there's still that, that need to make it right. It's just a little bit easier for us to do that because, again, people are able to compare what we are able to do to make something right with another case that they've seen before. Everyone's made a return at a store, right? So you kind of know what to expect on that side of things. But in digital marketing, it's a little bit harder because you can say, okay, well, here's how I'm going to make it right by doing step A, B, and C. But again, if they don't understand what you did in the first place, they're not going to understand how you making it right is going to improve the situation. So there's something really nice about being able to say, okay, well, we'll give you a refund, or we'll give you a discount on your next order, or we'll remake X amount so that you have the correct whatever. That's very easy for people to understand. You saying, okay, well,
And
I'm
you
going to
solve the issue within literally one conversation, kind of in 30 seconds of process,
exactly.
versus my side saying, I'm going to need 3 or 6 months to revitalize strategy and see how an algorithm, a large language model, and the consumer and the economy is going to react to what we changed, then to figure out what we changed and what actually moved the needle back into positive versus negative or decline. So you're absolutely right. Like, that's the biggest thing, one of the biggest things. But also on the sales side, like, let's dig deeper and just to your own reflections, because you have a very interesting perspective. And for people that are listening to this, is Emily and I have had this conversation a couple of times indirectly, and it's just when we catch up, because we don't get a chance to talk as much as we used to when she was in agency life. Life changes and evolves and so forth. Hint, hint, you better spend some more time with me. I'm not too happy with you, producer. Just kidding. But, from that front is, when we've talked about this, we've naturally just gone on a roll where we're just kind of brain dumping about, oh, this and that, whatever. We're like, this is material that like is very valuable to people. But so let's dig a little bit deeper. But, so you talked about, that's one thing, but what else have you seen? So we talked about the mental health side of maybe the urgency or always on alert, but what else have you seen specific to fully transitioning to focus on sales? In the differences between operations and sales, or agency operations and being a sales focused person helping a brand sell product.
Well, here's what I will say is I'm not, I would say I'm like 95% sales, but I'm still getting my hands dirty in the ops side because we do have some SOPs that we use. We didn't necessarily have one for sales, so I guess that's where it's almost a meeting of the minds of the two of them. But I've put together an SOP for myself, but also, knock on wood, if I ever get hit by a bus, somebody else can pick up and keep rocking and rolling on that side of things. So ops is still playing a role, and it's still important to the sales process, especially when you are able to systematize it. There's part of sales that you can't really systematize just because it's a people game, which is kind of where the challenge and the fun of it for me comes in, is understanding what makes people tick, understanding why they would want to purchase our product, and then establishing that relationship. And I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that, actually, Mike, because I think so much of sales is relationship building. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily think we attribute relationship building to ops, but I do think it's an important part of the role.
Hell yeah, it is. I had a, I have a question for you that I think will actually leverage further what you've just asked me, and and I'll certainly ask. But I was going to say, do you feel, starting your career or earlier stages of your career in operations and what you learned with Christina, and how you grew personally and professionally there has actually made you kind of out the gate a better salesperson for this new career path and focus you are, because you can tie the two together versus just being a traditional sales focused person, but can't see the back end or see the other side of what the customer needs to tie the conversation better, because your job is very difficult like any salesperson. Again, you kind of grew and learned under the Peter Pilarski learning tree, and Peter is a very focused and driven sales guy. Like I've said to Christina in past conventions and when I was with them, that Peter is sales 101. He's got the gift of gab. He knows how to hustle a room, and when I say hustle, I mean like he knows how to bring energy into conversation so people are enamored to stay locked with him when he talks. And that's really what you have to do, right? You have a very short amount of time. Let me rephrase. I have a lot of time in operations because I'm building fulfillment in the journey, and may have weeks or months or days to show with outcome we made the right decision for what's being done. But for you, you may have one cold call, one cold outreach, one inbound lead that comes in that you got to figure out very quickly. How do I get this customer to like me, to have a conversation with me? I got to qualify them, and ultimately I got to close them, because your benchmarks are different than someone in operations. Operations is about retention, operations around profit margin, operations around and things like that. But for you, it's quota. You've got to sell. And if not, then your higher up is saying like, Emily, what are you doing on the company's dime? So again, always long-winded Mike over here, but is that fair to say, in kind of when I ask you, do you think operational experience has actually allowed you to put a really strong sales foundation together, to tie more together, to give to the customer you're trying to sell and then retain?
Yeah, 100%. That is kind of where I would say there is a little bit of difference in what we do, because retention is still a little bit on me. And I mean, you could still say that about any salesperson, but how did the whole deal go? Because if at the very end I say something I shouldn't, then they might not come back.
Yep.
But to your point, the understanding the ops piece is definitely helpful in this, especially when we're doing something like branded merchandise, because then I understand what your specific, maybe not use case is for it, but I can understand, the thought process in deciding whether or not you're going to buy brand merch at all comes from. And I usually work with other marketing or salespeople to determine what our, finished product will look like. But I can understand how those folks would have to sell it to the people in ops to say, no, this is how it's actually going to benefit us from a brand building perspective, a PR perspective, an activation, whatever it might be. But it certainly lent itself to better understanding those folks and really closing the deal.
There you go. And that's your livelihood now, right? Is
Yeah.
you've got to close deals, you've got to hit quotas, and then you become the key person for that customer. And that's the other thing we're talking about here, is that customer management and customer relationship, which is the lifeline of any business, no matter the size of the brand or the agency. We live or die by keeping clients, because you're going to have churn and you're going to have people coming in and out. And again, a brand depends on people talking about it, showcasing it, sharing it, especially in the social space now, saying, look at how great this product is, the quality, the cost. And that can really burn a brand as well. So you are a very influential person to keep them coming back. Because again, it's all great to have them buy one, skid of product from you, but you want them coming back, 3-4 times a year at quantity X. That's the lifetime value of that customer versus one-offs. And those are much easier customers to resell to when your brand has new product, new things that they're trying to pilot, versus how hard it is to get net new acquisition of customers.
100%. It's way easier.
So what was the question you asked me again, since I turned that completely back on you?
I think ops is still relationship building. It just looks a little bit different than sales. Would you care to?
It is. It is. So what I'll say from my side and my experience, and I can tie this really back to my Peter being, in our agency, the key of business development and the front of sales for a long, long time in, my journey with him is ops is the reinforcement that the salesperson wasn't blowing smoke up the customer's ass, because we've all seen salespeople. We always say, all the sleazy car salesmen, and that's not at all to discredit people that sell cars for a living, because they are very skilled selling expensive vehicles to people. But there is, in every industry, there are the shady people. So that stereotype there means is like, there's always the person that knows how to hustle a sale to the finish line and so forth. But if you cannot fulfill, then right away there is contention and there's frustration. And then, does the project go sideways? And again, digital marketing agencies are not designed just to sell something like a website and then you want the customer just to leave. That's an injection of cash, and injections of cash or revenue is great. But the real survival of small business or digital marketing is recurring income streams. So you want to be able to use whatever the salesperson foot in the door strategy was to get that customer to basically adopt your agency. The fulfillment people, the ops manager, the project manager really has to solidify out the gate in the first meeting, because the confidence that the customer made the right decision. Because, my Peter, or even you, let's use both examples, different ages, completely different sales processes and styles, but they spend time with the customer. One call, one day, 3 months, we get them. Awesome. Got the win. You got the win because you found a way with your narrative and trying to strategize or recommend solutions to what they want, that the customer made the right decision. But they're excited. And that's why they signed, because they're excited for potential, or perhaps they found the product they want. Now, 1 or 2 weeks goes by, and now here's the kickoff meeting. And then a new person comes in. This is the project manager. This is the SEO manager. This is whatever that is going to ultimately fulfill or manage your account. And then from there, that person fumbles in the first meeting because, tell me about the brand. Tell me about this. Or they say something incorrectly and the person's like, that's not what I do at all. And right away, they're sitting there going, I've made a mistake, because there is no excitement now. Why? Because now you've charged them X amount of deposit, X amount, and now I call it, you're on the clock. And when the customer's on the clock putting money out there, they expect something. And you can't ripple everything that Emily worked so hard or Peter worked so hard at to say, please trust me that we can take you to the destination that you want to go. And now Jackass Mike comes in and says, fumbles. And I did a presentation on this in Dominican Republic a couple of years ago. And I said a story, and I'll tell it here as well, if you don't mind, very quickly, that I had a slide that basically said, the customer saw me like baby Huey coming in. And the joke was like this imbecile in a diaper that, right from the day one. So the story is Peter worked on an opportunity for a local business and worked very hard to get it. And it took a few months for the individual to sign and to say, okay, let's go. And I've been his PM for over 10 years. And I, have my process and so forth. And we do the kickoff meeting to bring, the first phase of it was web development. And I have my process. The owner comes in and I sit there and say, okay, can you tell me about your business? And right away she goes, I've already told Peter everything about my business. Why are you asking me that? And I said, I understand you've talked to Peter about your business, but Peter asks questions about the business and so forth, specific to understanding how to provide a solution for you. I have to go much deeper as an operations person so that I can ensure that I can be an extension of your voice, your brain, and your brand, so that I can articulate in this new website design what you want, so that, it's not only going to represent you and your brand that's been around for 30 plus years, but also then how we can leverage marketing on top of it. And she looked at me like, you're the biggest moron in the world. And right from that day, I lost the client's trust that I knew anything about anything I was talking about. And I've told that story in front of a room of over 100 people in an advanced training seminar because it's not to laugh at me. It's one of the worst moments of someone on operations. The outcome of that, no matter, the joke of baby Huey or what she thought of me or what I did wrong or whatever else, is number one, that project took 4 years to finish and launch because the customer was combative on every single aspect of the process, everything, because she did not like me and she did not like anything that we were doing because I think I lost her in that first meeting. Number two, the closing for this little story is we identified that there was a gap between sales and operations transition process because Peter used to write, on yellow legal paper in the days before we had transcripts and everything. And this is only a few years ago, but he would write notes because that's what you did, right? It was a conference call. It wasn't even Zoom. It was a board writing notes about the customer. And Mike, here's the notes from my process to your process. But Peter's got, chicken scratch handwriting and short form and everything else. And I'm someone who's very thorough and deep, and I don't want to come in unprepared. So I want to have as much information as possible. So how do you bridge the gap between, he didn't do anything wrong, but in the customer's eyes, it's like, who is this clown that's now restarting the entire process? And I've already given you 3 months in their mind of my time. You should know everything about my business.
Yeah.
So I guess basically the answer to you really is where ops plays a piece is ops's first major aspect of keeping customer retention and building client relationships is I have to go in and drop the hammer in those first 1 or 2 meetings, kickoff sessions to say, man, Emily was absolutely right in all everything she was positioning and suggesting about what we're buying from this brand or this agency. And wow, this guy just amplified it tenfold. And now the customer's leaving the kickoff meetings not exhausted and whatever, but they're excited still, and they haven't even seen a single design, a single strategy, or whatever else. So we really have to be the glue or the conduit between sales and operations, so that there's a consistency in the flow. And there's a wonderful example of how we had to learn it the hard way. And it was one of those nightmare clients and nightmare projects that, I just hated every time an email came in because it was never going to be, hey, let's get on track and here it is and thank you. It was always combative. And look, that's people, but you have to look from within. And clearly in that tenured businesswoman's eyes, I did not approach her in the right way to give her the confidence that the money she felt she was going to invest in the agency was the right decision, even though I hadn't had a chance to show her anything, which was, I knew our solution would be excellent. But once you lose them like that, you're always on your heels trying to be to defend what you're doing versus I'm your partner and I'm going to really take you through this dance to make sure that I take care of you. So and also, just in closing that piece up, and that question is, ops people have to maintain the relationship because the salesperson doesn't really come back in too much. The salesperson, and again, your business may be different, but in agency life, salespeople are typically, commissioned to bring in net new business, not recurring. A customer comes back and buys more because now that's an existing customer. So my job, or our job is we have to keep producing, fulfilling, and we have to keep nurturing that customer and working to upsell that customer in the right way based on what they need for their business, because we want that customer to be 2, 3, 5, 10 years with us as a strategic partner and not look at us as a meat grinder supplier that once one thing goes wrong, fired. We want them to say, help me solve this because I trust and depend on you. And I think that's really where ops plays such a pivotal aspect of client retention and client customer experience.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the nice things about the way that we work is there are really only, throughout a deal that we work on, there's only ever going to be, presumably, unless we have boss man jump in for any reason, but that happens very rarely, you're really only going to be working with 2 people, me and our designer.
Nice.
So anytime there is a question that is not related to design, or directly affects the design of the product, you're getting me. So I'll jump back in on quantities and pricing and timeline and that kind of thing. So it's nice that I'm able to get back in there as someone who's already kind of sold you the product and say, hey, I'm still here. Nope, everything's still on track. Here's what you need to know about XYZ. And then they jump back over to our designer. And so it's really nice that way that you're not seeing, and our designer and I work very closely and we work really well together, which also helps.
It
Um,
sure does. Because take my example even that step further, because it doesn't have to be the ops side, because that designer is ops. But
yeah,
exactly that. You're sitting there going, we do kick-ass designs. We can tailor this to your brand. We can do something kick-ass. And then if your designer, well, number one, is not aligned with Emily and how she's positioning that pivotal piece of the process, but this then all of a sudden the designer says, hey, John Smith, thanks for coming on board. Here's your first design. And it looks like something that, a kindergarten paints with a crayon. That immediately is, what the hell did Emily just sell me?
yeah,
and
yeah,
then and then you're pissed off, and then let's take it away from just the customer, but internally you're pissed off because you're like, I worked for 6 months to get that customer. I have put in the time, the blood, sweat, and tears to get them. I finally got the contract with them, and now you shit all over the first process. And now, and now that's going to hurt my livelihood, because all salespeople have a commission structure
yeah,
primarily. And then a book of business, and you're mandated by, is that book of business growing, or are you hitting those quotas week over week, month over month? And again, you're not just selling, oh, ring the bell, I sold 12 customers this month. It may
yeah,
take you a month, 3 months to sell a big deal, because that's the sales process in some instances with tougher clients or larger scale business. So then look at the ripple effect there, right? Like, now you're furious because it's harming your livelihood and how much effort you put into trying to win that customer and start to build that customer relationship.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And our designer is wildly talented. I could never do anything that she does because if I did the designs, they would look like a kindergartner drawing with a crayon. But she does really amazing work.
Does she edit and produce podcasts? I could replace you.
No, she does not.
Which you won't understand in the recording. You should have seen Emily's face. It just went very, very like gas quiet, and the mouse like, no. Dick Mike over here. Gotcha.
I think you've made an important point, and this is part of why it was time for me to go from agency life. Is that once the salesperson's made the sale, we've passed it off to ops, we've done the introduction, we've still got all the trust there. You still need people to deliver, right? You
Yes.
still need and whether it's you or whether it's the workhorses on your team who are getting her done. That really wasn't me anymore by the end. I just didn't have it in me anymore, and so that was part of the reason why I had to leave my marketing agency that I actually did really love and enjoy working at. But just the work was not fulfilling me anymore, and so that's where you run into problems, is when your workforces aren't delivering on their deliverables. See how many times I can say deliver or something like that.
Deliverables there, Emily.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of the last piece of the trust there, is making sure that you're actually delivering what you sold. And there's a litany of people who have to be part of that decision, but um, that's the last thing, is actually delivering what you committed to.
We've said it through numerous things we've said so far in chatting about this topic, but I'm just going to kind of bluntly coming back at you for this. So now you're really, you say you're in ops, but you're not. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, meaning you're not full bore, just operational fulfillment. Like I said, there's a small portion of your job that's ops still, but being out of it now, what do you really hate about ops? That's the fun stuff. Just spew venom. What did
Um,
you hate?
you know what? And I don't. Maybe many people will agree with this, but for me personally, I find it I find it too constricting.
Really? What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
there is a freedom to sales. Um, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's still quotas. You still have to do certain things. You still have to fulfill a certain amount of X, Y, Z. But I think there are less rules,
Okay.
which also makes it challenging in a completely different way.
Sure.
But for me, it makes it challenging in a way that is interesting because then I can sort of turn it over in my hands and figure out the way that I need to approach it differently. Whereas with ops, it's like, this is the process, do it. Does the process not
I
work?
was just going to say ops is very process driven versus necessarily adaptability to situations or people.
Yeah,
You still got to
which
follow the rules and the steps because that's defined by the operations department or the agency of this is how it has to be done. Otherwise, we're not going to be profitable.
Yeah, and do not get me wrong. I still think that's incredibly important because you get hit by the bus, you're training a new employee, you are, taking something new on in your role. All of those pieces are really important and are going to make you much better at what you do and they're going to help you learn faster. So I'm not trying to discredit ops and process in that way because I still think it's incredibly important. But from the sales side of things, there, like I said, there's just a bit more freedom and there's a bit more room to play and sort of figure things out. And it definitely keeps things different and changing, which I really like. Um,
Yeah.
so I would say I do find ops a bit constricting sometimes, but I would also say that I do still quite enjoy both things. I think I just need a little bit of both in my life. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. What staying on your ops experience,
Hmm.
and my experience and so forth. Specific to ops because ops sucks. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, why do you think we built this podcast with Christina initially, and now how I continue to drag you to record these things is and write songs that ops sucks. It's a joke, everybody. I'm somehow wired to still do this, but ops does suck. I've said it 3 times now in like literally 20 seconds. But why do you think the operation side of any business, but stay with your experience on digital marketing?
Yeah.
Why do you think ops has such a high burnout rate? And not at all for people exiting the career path. Like Jack's a very interesting story. You're a completely different story, different ages, different areas of the world. But and then there's me that's still in operations now, going on 20 years in the industry, 17 with WSI Commandex. But why do you think operational people get burned out through the year, or to the point when they say like I have to make an extreme career adjustment here, like a Jack and an Emily did? I'm very interested to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. I think it's probably, at least in this case, fairly related to digital marketing itself. And I don't mean the
Okay.
technical side. I don't mean, making somebody's SEO thing work. But I think, like I said earlier, to work at a digital marketing agency is difficult. It's not an easy thing and it's not for everyone. You are
Why?
drinking from the fire hose all the time. Your clients don't really understand. I don't want to say everyone because lots of them do
The
actually have
fire
quite a bit of
hose.
digital marketing knowledge. But lots of digital marketing clients don't understand what you're doing, and there's no fault in that.
Yeah.
That's not me trying to point fingers, but they don't understand, so it's much harder to prove your value, and it's unfortunately at times fairly easy to lose trust for that reason because they don't understand what you're doing and you have a hard time explaining it to someone who doesn't know anything about what you're doing because a lot of it is highly technical.
Yeah.
um, and there's layman's terms for it, but no, like you can't necessarily reduce it down to something as simple as if I do this then this happens, because that's not always the outcome. There are so many different factors at play. So I think just the volume of work that you're doing, and also the constant battle of trying to help someone who may not understand what you're doing understand what you're doing is
Yeah.
extremely difficult. And so I think what we haven't really talked about in there is there's a lot of emotional labor.
What do you mean by that?
Well, trying to make sure someone trusts you is a lot of emotional labor there are certain things that you can do, particularly in digital marketing, to demonstrate that. I did this, so the outcome was this. It's not the outcome you were looking for because XYZ. But if I've just said something in Italian to you and you don't speak Italian, it doesn't matter. You may not trust me, right? So there's a lot of emotional labor and a lot of hand holding, and I think Christine would probably say the same thing, in making sure that our clients trust us. And I think that's totally part of the job. That's what you are signing up for. So this is not me saying, oh my God, woe is me. We have to do all this emotional labor. That's part of it. But that also contributes to burnout, I think, a lot more than, doing the SEO, technical, whatever, right? That part of it might be hard. It might be a slog to get through, but it's not going to be, I think, as taxing as, trying to make sure that not just one of your clients, but all of your clients are maintaining that trust. And it's easier for some folks than others because tenure, the work you're doing, the volume of work, etc. But I think there's a huge emotional labor that, we may be conscious that we take on and we may be unconscious that we take on, but I think it's there. And I think it absolutely drives burnout, especially when you've established relationships with your clients and you consider them to be maybe not friends, but something akin to a client friend sort of relationship, right?
Yep.
So then it begins.
You start to care in small business. I'll just say this: in small business, you start to care about those relationships. You don't look at them as units. Again, when you're selling units and you have 50,000 customers buying X, then they are unfortunately units. Other than the big relationships with recurring. But in agency life, again, you're dependent on keeping recurring revenue moving forward. And that is completely about partnership and trust, that they will go through the ebbs and flows of performance data, ups and downs and successes and wins and trialing this and that. So it's very much about that relationship, and to the point where, and maybe this is a tip for ops people, is you need to know where to turn that off. And you're listening to the guy that can't turn it off and has harmed himself so much, and, trying to go above and beyond always to put the customer first, which is respectfully, it's not a bad thing. Because I think that's where, in some instances, my reputation and experience and why people choose to trust me, whether it's in my own agency dynamic and people that, like to talk to me in digital marketing and so forth. But, you need to know where it's like, this is a job. Ultimately the customer, you may think they're your friend. And I do hope that there are friendships that come out of client relationship, and there always are. But when performance is not there on the digital marketing side, that word friendship doesn't mean shit, because now it turns into how much money am I spending and what am I getting for my dollar? And when things are not going right and people are pressured about, month over month, spend, they can get nasty very quickly. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that customer's with me, but 7-8 years, they'll never leave. And then one bad month or two compounded screw ups, and all it's like, see you later. And then you're sitting there feeling like you lost your best friend or your kitten got, run over. So you need to find where that boundary is, really what I'm trying to say, is to understand that they are buying something from you. That's ultimately what a customer is, the difference between a customer and a friend. And that's why a lot of people will say, and I know this, whether it's personal life or, whatever else, is don't work with family. Don't work with friends, because there is no boundary line between, the separation between that, because ultimately now there's money involved and people will get very upset and very malicious if you burn them. And how many people have been burned in digital marketing by the same shtick, the same promise and whatever. And then again, punchline, you don't fulfill. So, do you also, I want to shift for a moment to stay on that theme of, the kind of burnout, because you did experience that in your own way. And again, we're not going to go into what that burnout is, but again, reflection is more important, because that's the growth. And I can see tremendous growth in you through the last 6-8 months of just your journey as a woman, and on the personal side, but also even the way you're talking here compared to conversations we had when I was able to come up to Alberta and see you, and you had some PTO time there to really just allow yourself to say, what do I want and where am I going moving forward? So going back to burnout, do you think a big aspect of digital marketing burnout? So you really focused it on the clients and the emotional energy and and so forth. But do you think the burnout also comes from that the digital marketing landscape is never predictable and never linear, and it's always adapting and evolving every day? And now, here's an interesting segue with AI, because I do want to ask you a couple of questions about AI in the usage of your day to day now. But now with AI becoming a tool, functionality, replacing jobs, changing the search experience and so forth, there's a lot of digital screen time, and everything now has to be even faster adaptability, faster in execution. How many things we're trying to do with too many tiles and whatever else. Like, do you feel that was a product of, just why digital marketers or ops people burn out or have that mental really fatigue of the battery is so low?
Mm. Yeah, I definitely think that played a role. It's funny that you mentioned AI because I think it's something that we are. I mean, we're all talking about it. It's obviously a huge topic these days in pretty much every industry, regardless of your role, regardless of your seniority, anything like that. And I suppose there has been, the big question mark around digital marketing and what it's going to look like with AI. I think Christina and Peter are doing a really great job of integrating it so that they can use it as a tool to their advantage rather than, getting swept up in the wave and maybe being steamrolled. So I'll give them kudos there because I think they're leveraging it very well.
Yeah,
But I mean, there is still, the question mark of what does job security look like for digital marketing agencies in the next 5 to 10 years? And
time.
regardless of how you're using AI or, adapting to all this technological change, to your point that we're seeing right now, something's going to change. We don't know what that looks like yet. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest probably fears for anybody in digital marketing is like, what is it going to look like? Nothing makes me more anxious than uncertainty. So
Same
um,
here. That's
yeah,
probably why we're as good of friends as we are, because that's one thing is the same with us. I don't like the uncertainty because my mind thinks too far ahead, and you can't right now. You just got to kind of day by day continue to adapt and learn, because everybody's in the same position, to your point. But can I just say before I lose the thought, you hit something really interesting there, which could be a whole other podcast or a bonus episode, maybe when I can have you back when you're free, is you mentioned there that will agencies be around in 5 years? And what I mean by that is we're already seeing signals, not every day, but we're seeing signals with people we talk to saying, why would I spend $700, $1,500, $2,500? I can just go get a free ChatGPT account and I can just do everything you do, and I can do it in 10 seconds.
yeah,
But we're already getting that conversation. You want me to spend $8,000 on a new website build when I've heard in the news, and I heard from my brother's dad, stepbrother's aunt, that websites are being built in 30 seconds now by the push of a button. So we're already getting that contention of misperception of what it is, and all the bullshit that's online that's saying we're doing this and we're doing that. But and again, maybe what I'll just say, because I want your perspective, but a big shout out to the WSI network, and I mean this truthfully, is they're trying very hard from head office down to really identify the factual reality of what AI is. Yes, it is changing landscape, but how to be thought leaders to talk about it, because it is still a tool. Like you've said this numerous times, about tool, but it's a tool. It does not yet replace us from the human interpretation of what the quality of the outcome is. And that's where that AI slop concept comes, of just trusting it blindly. But there are still a ton of mistakes. There are still confusion of the large language models, even interpreting us of what we want it to do. And everybody is so enamored now to systematize and have these agent workers to do things. And yes, this is where it's going. It's already here. But the smart people that are doubling down early and trying these and trying to execute are really saying that, it's not 100% perfect. I still have to look at it. I still have to fight with it to iron it down and refine it and so forth. So, it we really have to make sure moving forward in the sense of agency, the value is not the output or the outcome. That's what the customer wants. But what I'm trying to say is the real value of working with an agency is that you have specialists and individuals there. No matter how efficient they are leveraging the tools, they are staying up to date and relevant on the subject matter. They are testing and working and investing to basically become AI engineers now in our own spaces. And from that matter is that we know how to do it better because we live and breathe this every day versus a company that's going in for just one purpose to do something in ChatGPT where, you and I in our ops days look at it for strategy, execution, planning, response, output, problem solving, and how to combine all of those. And that's so what I'm saying is the value of the agency is the people. It's not the output and it's not the bravado of an agency. It's the people is really what's going to be important if we're going to sustain moving forward, because we are the unique selling proposition, not the agency and not the solution that's being provided. I feel very strongly about that. What do you think about that?
No, I 100% agree. And I think there's a couple things that people aren't necessarily thinking about when it comes to AI. I think the strategy piece is a big one that, people probably think about from a high level, but I'll give you an example. I look at so many websites every day because I'm trying to find leads. And a lot of them are not good because they're not working. Broken buttons, map APIs aren't working. They have an incredibly slow load time. So, that's going to affect your SEO, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that people may not necessarily know about from a technical perspective. And yeah, you can Google some of those things and be able to, in theory, fix them yourself. But if you don't actually know how to technically enhance the speed of your website, that's going to take you, I personally think it's going to take you a lot longer to figure out, even if you use ChatGPT, than if you just go to an expert, Mike, who can fix it for you in probably about you know what I mean? Like that to me, if I was totally green and I didn't know anything about the technical side of websites, why would I not want to pay my friend Mike, I don't know, $100 to just fix it for me when I could be sitting there all day trying to do it? I don't know. That's my perspective.
Sorry, friend, but I don't get out of bed for less than $1,000. So your $100, I'm not responding to your email.
For 10 minutes of work? He's a big ticket guy.
No, just an idiot. Well,
so the other thing that I do want to say before we move on here, the other thing that I feel like people are not necessarily considering is the further we get into this whole, even ChatGPT, OpenAI, the further we get in there, the better they make their models, the more paywalls they slap on it. Which we live in a society that is 100% their right. But there's one thing to say, okay, make me a website in 30 seconds for free, and it's going to look probably like shit. And then I'm going to spend the, $150 a month or whatever it's going to be on the OpenAI or the tool, whatever it happens to be, to create me this beautiful website, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to look so nice, and it's going to maintain it, and it's going to host it, or whatever the plan looks like. But I'm going to spend $150 a month. That's going to cut a lot of people out, I think. Not a majority, but it's going to cut a lot of people out. So as an agency, if you can say, we'll build you this and it'll be quick and it'll be relatively affordable, but we're going to pay that big ticket price to make sure that, that bill isn't on you, that's where part of the value comes in as well. And then obviously the design is taken care of, the technical side is taken care of, that strategy piece is infused in there. So if you need, I don't know, some fancy doohickey that most people don't have on their website, they can get that in there for you, and you don't have to worry about that. Even if you could work with, a large language model to figure that out, they can do it faster, cheaper, and
it's not. And I'm saying this like the voice of the customer or the client or whatever else. That's not your focus in your day to day, is to do that. Your focus is your specialty is whatever you're doing on your business and so forth. So now you got to find in a world now where everybody says no matter job, age, and whatever, there's not enough time in the day and how fast time goes because the accessibility of the internet now and on demand and WhatsApp's pinging over here and Instagram's pinging over here and emails there and then the phone's ringing and so forth. So there's no time anymore. And that's also, I think, why people are burned out. And when we've focused on digital marketers, but why we're seeing burnout across the entire workspace is because too much screen time, too much accessibility, not putting it down, and everything is just coming too fast at us. So again, as a customer, why do you want to try to find 3 or 4 or 5 more hours in your day or your evening or your week when, again, you have a professional agency? And this is something I've always gotten frustrated about. And it's always a conversation with people when agencies lose business is, we've hired somebody internally that's going to handle that. And saying, but you're spending $3,000, or let's just use a number, $3,000 to $5,000 a month with an agency to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But that means you have 8 different specialists on your contract working on that month over month. Okay, so that's, let's just say $5,000 times 12, which if my math is right, that's 12, 24, 36, 40, that's $60,000. You ain't getting a specialist internally for $60,000 salary that can do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Yeah.
And I've never understood that argument from businesses to think, well, we're going to build our own digital marketing department. No, look, you got $100 million in revenue coming in year over year, then maybe you're designed to do that, and rightfully so. But again, the small to medium sized business, Emily, doesn't have that type of revenue or even budget overhead for staffing to bring in those specialists, because specialists don't cost $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that piece either, and why people try to perceive it like that. And you're absolutely right. Why wouldn't you pay? And you're very kind. Why wouldn't you pay your friend Mike? But why wouldn't you pay a professional to do what they're experienced, have knowledge, and know that can work? I would never. For example, podcasting here, this is our fun endeavor. I would never try to replace you by saying I can save X amount of dollars by trying to do it. I'm not a specialist in this. I can record and I can, and I can articulate with my fingers, but I don't know how to execute what you execute. So that's why you pay people to do what they are passionate and specialized on. And I think it's such an interesting point in that regard, even though we're bouncing around of just the perception of things. And it's going to get even harder with AI now, because people are going to think that they can do everything just because AI is going to spit out slop. And that's not the reality of accuracy right now.
Well, I've told you this before, but someone who I am no longer really friends with, but at one point she was like, I could do your job. And I was like, really? Really? Even though you went to school for psychology, you could do my job. Interesting. So I think there's this perception that everybody knows how to do digital marketing. And it's like, look, there are certain things that everybody can do. We've had that conversation too, right? Like, yes, anybody can write a blog. Anybody can write a blog now, but anybody can write a blog. Anybody can put up an Instagram post. Anyone can write copy for a website. Anyone, in theory, depending on what, hosting tool you're using for your website, anybody could host a website. Anyone could, update their website with the content that we wanted. None of it is terribly rocket science, but there are some things that without the right strategy, without the right technical knowledge, not everyone can do. With all love and light.
No, you're absolutely right. And how does it all connect? And how does it actually move the needle, which is what business owners want and people? Because again, you can write, in your own mind, you can write 500 amazing blogs. You can figure out your own keyword research. But if you cannot tie it back to data that it's actually progressing your brand to get to whatever the end destination or goal or revenue target it is, then you've just wasted a colossal amount of time basically feeding your own ego versus actually showing that my business is sustainable, it's growing, I hit the margins I want, or, with the changing economics, and that's a whole other story, just people surviving moving forward. And that's where businesses and consumers are very scared of just their livelihood. And so, double down on focusing on hiring experts that will help you move the needle, until artificial intelligence is intelligent to the point where it will be systematized fully to automate a lot of things. And, that's the future. And when we get there, we'll get there. But, for now, trust humans, leverage AI. Ops sucks. And Emily, I'm so glad you came and spent some time with me. I have missed you dearly. And I hope you'll come back and we'll talk about something else, because, this is a wonderful topic. There's many branches to this we could cover in different lights. There's other songs that you haven't listened to that maybe, we can play off of, but I hope you'll come back soon.
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, rumblings are that you're going to be heading somewhere nice and warm where there's a beach. So I hope you have a lovely time to turn off your brain, because salespeople need to recharge just as much as ops people. I'm Ops Mike. We're found on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Angry Ops Guy _WSI. More material coming, more guests coming. Ops Mike out. Emily, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.
See ya.